presence on Facebook, whether they like it or not. To me, it just seems questionable. I mean, I saw when I looked at this earlier on, somebody came up there as a potential friend of some Chinese name, but the picture on it was clearly Ludwig Wittgenstein. Well, somebody out there, presumably one of the people currently is a friend of this person, has created this in order to try to say something about themselves. They're trying to say something about their own lack of personality. It's nothing to do with that person, but nothing to do with her. She hasn't set that up. She's dead. She's gone. Albert Einstein's on there. It reminds me of, I don't know if any of you have ever read Gogol, but if you've ever read Dead Souls. Have you ever read Dead Souls? Dead Souls, which is Gogol's great work, is about a character called Chichikov. And the character goes around in Russia buying up dead souls, dead people, dead serfs. In those days in Russia, they had a feudal system where the landowners owned a number of serfs, but the census machine was very slow, so the census didn't catch up with the ones that had died for maybe several years. And they were still being taxed on them. So this character goes around buying them up from farmers, the landowners who don't want them anymore, so he buys them their dead people from. It kind of makes me feel like that. We should have a modern day Chichikov character going around Facebook, so buying up all these dead people that are on there, that you're marketing to, you're trying to sell sports cars to. In fact, I had a quick look, and there is a Chichikov. It's got a Twitter site. It's a character out of Gogol's novel. What does it mean? And this is why I find this kind of thing slightly disturbing, because it's not real. In many cases, many e-learning technologies are badly constructed. They actually socially isolate the user, which learning is a social process, so that's going to fail from the outset. But even where people have tried to use social networking technologies to make it a much more social experience of learning, it still isn't working. Why isn't it working? What is it that's missing? And I think what's missing is this something, this imponderable bloom that you cannot quite get from this remote connection. So on the second point, the questions really we're asking, with these modern technologies, are we trading high thrills and surfing through information that seems ultra interesting to us for commitment? This is an interesting point. The way that information is presented electronically nowadays tends to have what we would call an unstructured form. It's hyperlinked. That's the normal way of doing things. Hyperlinking information is very different from the information presentation in a traditional book. Very different. And to access information that's hyperlinked, you can go at a very shallow level. You can go from fact to fact to fact to fact. Hyperlinks can be quite obscure. And you can see lots and lots and lots of very, very interesting things. The question is, are you actually learning anything from that? Or is it just things that are momentarily interesting? Kierkegaard talks about this phenomenon even back in his day when he was talking about the press in the form of what we've called the tabloid press now. Where he talks about reporting every trivial thing so that it makes everything seem interesting but nothing worth knowing. And this is the problem with unstructured information. You can access it at a very shallow level, as opposed to commitment that's involved in accessing information in its more traditional structured form. You can't hyperlink this. You can't undermine the structure of this. You can dive into it and find parts and read it, but essentially if you want to understand the book, you have to read it. And that commitment has a very important educational value. So are we trading this? Are we trading the comfort and the safety of this anonymous environment that we tend to like to occupy these days for the risks of the reality of actually being involved in doing things with other people? So my question for you to consider in terms of the future is this then. If, in general, we keep on doing this, we keep on promoting, virtualizing, taking all the risk out of everything, if we keep on removing this imponderable glue, if we decide we don't need that anymore, then where does it take us? I'm sure you'll have your views on that. I certainly do. What I think is we run the risk of losing something essential from these contacts, from these communications, from the experience of education. So we lose something essential that we can't quite identify. In some way, if you like, on the first point there, we run the risk that we are reducing the beauty of the thing, the art, the craft of the thing, that would traditionally have been associated with what we were talking earlier on about the difference between the development and invention of the printing press against the internet. We are losing this something, this sort of imponderable bloom. As we progress with technology, it is relentless inevitability that we run the risk, I think, of losing this something essential. Here's an example for you from this, which is this. From this thing, which I think is a pretty good thing, to this. That's a progression that's happening. This to an electronic version of this. And have a view on that. What is your view on that? Is that a good transition? Is it a bad transition? Does it really not matter? It's a very difficult thing to assess. So I think the question to ask on something like that is, well, are we actually comparing apples with apples? Is this a fair comparison to compare this with something like an electronic book? We talk about, on the first point, people who are very well educated, people, we maybe talk about them being well read. You know, they are well read. They understand lots of things. They've obviously spent a lot of time learning a lot of knowledge in this traditional way, and they're well read individuals. So nowadays, what would we have as an equivalent to being well read? Would that equivalent be that they've actually processed all that information electronically that they've now accessed? Or would it just be that they know how to go and find things? Or they have a really good bank of files? Or they have a fantastic set of apps on their latest iPhone or whatever? What's the measure that we now use to assess a person as being the equivalent of somebody being well read? Is it the same or is it different? I don't know. Is there a like-for-like comparison? We've been doing this for years at Futures Lectures. We say, well, what does it mean to have an ebook? What does an ebook mean? What does e-paper mean? What does e-learning mean? And so on and so on. And actually, when you think about it, the question is more fundamental. Can we compare this with an electronic book? Is that a fair comparison? And what happens when you go into an electronic book is that all of that information, which is in its structured form, to which you have to make a commitment to learn, becomes unstructured, because as soon as you can search electronically for bits of it and you can link from one bit to another bit, it is no longer the same thing. It is not the same thing. As soon as it's become unstructured and therefore has the ability to be searched and hyperlinked electronically, it is not the same thing as a printed book. It is not the same comparison in that case. I leave you to draw your own conclusions on whether that's good or bad.